Well, hey everyone, Pastor Justin here. Listen, I pray praise and worship was great for you, and I'm here live. I promised you an amazing time and conversation on home ownership as we are in this month of ownership, right, in a year of follow through. And so, as you know, for my wife and I, we are in this process, and hopefully by the time we end this conversation, the next couple of days, we'll be closing on our first home. But the person leading us and working with us through this entire endeavor is, you guys see on the screen with me, Brother Josh West. And Josh has been a godsend, and you'll learn more about him in a moment, for us, but also it can be a godsend for you as we go through this journey. You guys know, for me, this journey with Pastor Justin is I'm inviting you into the spaces of my own life. And so this is one of those areas that's been huge for us, and Josh has been a blessing. And so not only want him to be a blessing to us, but a blessing to you. So would you all welcome on your couches, put your hands together, and welcome to the screen, Brother Josh West. Welcome, Josh. Hey.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, Josh. So if you would, man, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself? Like, who are you? I know you're a native Rhode Islander, so like where you grew up and went to high school, your favorite place to get a lobster roll.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Rhode Island. I was actually born in Riverside, which is a neighborhood in East Providence. Yeah. I was born and raised there for a number of years. I also have family out on Block Island. So my mother's family been on the island for over 100 years now. And so we have a lot of family history that's there. And I like to spend a lot of my time, especially in the summer, fall, and actually recently we've been going out in the winter time too. So I grew up and doing that. I went to East Providence High School, played footballs, go Townies. And yeah, man, I started off in the motorcycle industry, surprisingly enough. I was really into dirt bikes and motorcycles as a kid. I was fortunate enough to have people in my family who kind of helped me along that and taught me along the ways. When I got out of high school, I was going to community college and didn't have a lot of going on. I don't think I was super motivated at what I had ahead of me. So one day I was working on my motorcycle and thought, why don't I just do this? So I went and got my certificate to be a power sports technician. And I did that for a number of years. I worked in small shops. I worked at Harley Davidson for years. I worked as a touring salesperson for motorcycle accessories, which is a pretty cool gig. Yeah. And right around 2015, things in my personal life started changing. We had some stuff happen in my wife's family, and I needed to make a move. So I actually sold my first home. And I always tell people that's really the start of me becoming a real estate agent.
Yeah.
Because when I bought my first home, I had what I consider the worst experience of all time. Wow. I had a terrible realtor. I was so uninformed. I was so ignorant to almost everything that was going on. It was kind of, sign here and bring your money over here. And I just kind of went with it. It worked out. I got my first house. I bought my first house at, I think, age 24. Wow. And so everything was really great and it was worked out, but I never had a great experience along the way. I didn't have like a guide or anybody to advise me along the way. And when I got out of the motorcycle industry, I was going to sell my first house, and the realtor who showed up was a professional. He was super caring. He was super knowledgeable. He helped me along the way. He made sure that I was educated about every step. And to me, going through those two experiences led me to say, I could do this. And so that's kind of what landed me it's selling real estate. But in the meantime, after I got out of high school and was working in the motorcycle industry, I met my wife. I'm actually a safety instructor for motorcycles for the state of Rhode Island, and she came and took my class. And all the love story continues after that. And we now have two beautiful sons. Nigel is my oldest; he's going to be turning 4 in a couple of weeks, and my younger guy Zion, he's turning 8 months in a couple of days.
Awesome, man! That's awesome, man. And
thank you.
We have some members from our church that are from and live in East Providence. Our host today, Deacon Gloria, she's in East Providence. Cool. And that's awesome, man. I grew up in Wisconsin, so Harley Davidsons and motorcycles and all of that, man. Just hearing that just brings me back to our house was right next to the freeway and the main docking place for the Harley Davidson.
Hear it all day.
Yeah, and so I remember in high school when they had the 100th anniversary and we couldn't go to sleep. There was just so many people. So let me, so to jump into this, man, so we, and even with your story, talking about the bad experiences and the ways you want to lead people with good experiences, in 4 or 5 minutes even, or even in a couple of steps, I know there's more than one. Let's say I'm a member of the church and I'm Googling home. Like I'm just curious to purchase a home. And I Google and immediately, let's say I end on Trulia, Zillow, Redfin, whatever those things. What are the steps that you would suggest or the steps that I'll have to like either go through the necessary things from Redfin or Trulia or Zillow to getting the key and taking a picture to walk into my personal.
Yeah, of course. So one thing I'll say about the stuff that's online, real estate has turned into a really hands-on experience for buyers these days. Years ago, before I got my license, the realtors kind of held the key to the real estate world, meaning if you wanted to buy a house, you had to sit with a realtor. A realtor had all of the listings from the MLS, the multiple listing service. They had them in paper in a book. And so you would have to sit with a realtor, you get in a realtor's car, they would drive you around and show you properties. And as you know, times have changed, right? So all this stuff is online now. The one thing I always warn people about is be careful of what you see online. Those companies that you mentioned, Trulia and Zillow, which are actually the same company, Realtor.com, Homes.com, these guys their main objective is to sell your information to realtors. As I hate to be blunt, but that's really what they're there for. They're there to collect data from you and introduce you to those agents that you see on the side of every listing. And so I only say that because a lot of times the information that you're going to get from those sites aren't always accurate. Sometimes the price may be way off, or it says a home's for sale, but it really sold 3 months ago. And they do that because they need to keep their information not as up to date as possible, because then that's going to reduce the amount of listings that they can go and sell to the other realtors. So I would say it's a great place to start. When you start poking around on Zillow and all those sites, there's been billions of dollars that have been pumped into that technology. You're looking at a super user-friendly format. It's easy now to sit on your couch and just kind of go through listings, and if something catches your eye, show it to your wife or show it to your spouse, and start the conversation there. So I think that's a great place to start still. Once you get the itch and the conversation becomes a little bit more real at the kitchen table, and can we do this? Are we looking to buy a home? Does this make sense for us? I always say there's two people you should reach out to first. One is a loan officer.
Okay.
Talk to a loan officer first. Loan officer is going to tell you what you can afford to buy. They have their own rubrics and algorithms that show them, they punch in all your financial information, and it kind of spits out a number to them for what you're pre-approved for. Once you have that pre-approval, or once you've had the conversation to say, maybe right now is not a great time, but do this, and this, a great loan officer is going to show you the steps that you can take in order to be financially ready to be able to purchase a home. And the second call I'd say to make would be to maybe either somebody that who's purchased a house recently, or like you guys have going on at the church, like find someone who's been through this before and find out what their experience was with their real estate agent. Justin and I, we've been through some stuff over the last couple weeks now, and if the relationship wasn't great, your experience would be even worse than what it is right now. You'd be going through different hurdles with people who don't pick up the phone, or maybe the personalities don't match. But find someone, a realtor, and I always say a local realtor, who can kind of help you, show you what the steps are. I, as a real estate agent, like to sit down with my people first and foremost. Whether you're looking to purchase in the next couple of weeks, or you're looking to purchase 2 years down the road, like I said, education has become really big to me. I know that my role now as a realtor isn't to get you into my car and show you these properties and show you my list of properties that you can see online now. My goal and my job is to educate you, make you feel empowered, encouraged, and know all the steps along the way. And so sit with a realtor, sit with someone who knows what they're talking about, not someone who purchased a house 20 years ago. Sit with somebody who's ingrained in this now, who has a great pulse on what the market's like. And they're going to walk you through from your pre-approval in one hand and the power of your realtor in your right hand. It really makes everything sensible. So you get your pre-approval, you speak with an agent. An agent's usually going to get you set up on some type of automated email that'll send you listings in your area, send you listings in your price range. That way you don't have to sit on Zillow and kind of scour through every listing. You get a curated list that gets sent to you every day. Then from there, you're going to go out and you're going to start doing some showings. So you're going to go into the homes, you're going to take a look at things, which can be a really fun time for folks. It's nothing like those HGTV shows that you see. I wish it was, but it's, it can be a fun experience, getting out and looking at homes, looking at things that you really like, as well as things that you don't like at all. So sometimes for us, it's, I hated this house, but man, I love the kitchens. I love the way the cabinets were set up. And you can kind of take that and save that for you so that you know what you're looking for when you eventually find the house that you like. Once you find the house that you like, you're going to put in an offer. You're going to negotiate that offer, or your agent's going to negotiate for you. If everything goes good, you're going to sign a purchase and sales agreement, which is your agreement that ties you to that property. And you're going to have to come up with a deposit, which is the first time you're going to spend money. So a deposit's usually about $1,000, and that holds you to that deal to kind of keep you from walking away and finding another place. Once you have the deposit, you're going to do an inspection. If your realtor has a list of people that they like to use, sometimes that's a great place to start rather than just Googling home inspectors. But bringing an inspector, hopefully in this state now they need to be licensed, which is crazy because they didn't need to be licensed years ago. And then they're going to do an inspection. The bank is going to do an appraisal to make sure that the house is worth the money that you're spending on it. And then there'll be a couple other negotiation points that get worked out between your agent and the sellers. From there, it's a lot of back end work, and it's you prepping and boxing all your stuff and getting ready for a big move. And hopefully, fingers crossed, if everything's good at that point, you kind of in the weeks to come will be moving in and going to a closing to take possession of the house that you just bought.
That's awesome. And the thing is, like, like when we got into the place, the first thing we did, we were looking at Redfin stuff, and we were like, okay, I think we can. And then we didn't realize there were so many different steps that came along with it. And I know one of the first steps, and like you mentioned, was going to a loan officer. And so one of the questions we got in from one of our members was, where does my credit need to be to purchase a home?
Yeah, great question. Typically, I say 580. 580 is really the bare minimum you're going to need in order to get qualified. But I'll tell you, trying to get qualified at 580 can be it can be difficult. Sometimes they're going to require you to pay some things off in order for that to work, or you're going to have to bring a huge down payment to the table in order for it to work. So I usually tell people 620 is really where you want to be as far as a minimum score. Like I said, you can skate by with a 580, but shoot for 620 if your score is low. And there's some great ways you can do that. You can go look at Credit Karma. Nerd Wallet. There's a bunch of different websites and apps out nowadays to kind of keep an eye on your credit. But yeah, I'd say 620 is really where you should be at if you're starting to look for purchasing a home.
Okay. One of the questions, so with that too, student loans. Like I know I have a lot of student loans, and my wife does too, and just a lot of fights right now in Washington, and everybody trying to. I saw something online. It was someone trying to fill out a petition to get them to eliminate student loans in light of this, all of that. So if I have student loans, like we have some recent graduates in the past 2 or 3 years, and loans are hitting, will that stop me from getting a home? Like how big of a hindrance, or is it a hindrance of having, let's say, $100,000 or even $150,000 of student loan debt?
It's not always gonna stop you. It can 100% affect you, and it's really, when it comes to credit and getting pre-qualified and pre-approved, it's really on a case-by-case basis. As a realtor, I try to kind of stay out of those conversations. I think you and I even talked about when we first got started that's one of the only places that I kind of put a wall up. I don't want to know what your credit score is or how much money you make or how much debt you have. I let the loan officer kind of deal with that, and they go situationally. So I've seen people with some serious student loan debt, but the way that their other finances were worked out, it was okay. So they have, like I said, all different types of calculators and algorithms that they use to decide how eligible you are or for how much you're eligible for. A lot of that comes down to what your debt to income ratio is. So if you're making a good amount of money, you can have a bunch of debt as long as it balances itself out. Same thing as I see people who don't have a lot of debt, but they don't make as much money on the salary side. So it kind of, it balances itself out. So that question really would be for a loan officer to see, but don't let that disqualify you, because, there's people who are doctors, very early on in the residencies who are buying homes because they have the ability to. So don't let that be a hindrance for you.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. So the other piece that's kind of the same movements we have. We got a question too about renting, right? So why should I buy a house over renting for a long period of time? Because we have a lot of apartments that are going up that look really nice and all of that. And why is it important then for me to pursue purchasing a home over against constantly renting month in and month out?
Yeah, it's a great question too. So the simple term, or the simple answer, is equity. Equity is the amount of money that you would have after you pay off your mortgage if you were to sell the property. And historically speaking, something like don't quote me on this, but something like 76% of all the wealth created in this country comes directly from real estate. So whether it's people who hold real estate and rent it out, it's people who buy real estate, fix it, and then flip it again for a profit, or it's typically it's homeowners who stay in their home for a decent amount of time so that they pay their mortgage down, and then they let the market kind of naturally increase. So let's say, for instance, they buy a home in 1990 for $120,000. They've paid their mortgage off, and now here they are 30 years later, and the house is worth $280,000. They're going to be able to walk out of the house with $280,000, even though they've only paid for $120,000. So equity is the name of the game. I've watched, just in my short career in real estate, families transformed. Truly, I've watched families where the mother's been on assisted living, or she's been on Section 8 for her whole life, and now she's
Wow.
able to go through some programs, and she was able to be financially responsible for a little bit so she could buy herself a home. And now her children are looking at the ability to, in 10, 20, 30 years, have a gift given to them of money, real money, that when they sell that property, they're going to be holding on to that. And so equity, we watch people every day where they start off in a home. Let's say they start off with one child, right? They have a small 2-year-old child. They buy their first home. Then in 3 or 4 years, they have another child. The market has naturally kind of gone up a little bit. They move on to their second home, and they use the equity from their first home as the down payment for their second home.
Got it.
Then years later, the children are in high school. It's time to maybe move again, and they can sell that home. And then they kind of keep snowballing this money through.
Yeah.
And usually in these increases, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars being available to you, that you kind of, I always like to say that you grew in your home, right? You grew in your little nest egg, that you just let the market kind of naturally go up while you paid your mortgage down, and you're stuck with equity. So that's one of the major advantages.
Yeah.
The second advantages would be tax breaks. So the taxes have changed a little bit over the last few years with this current administration, but typically you're going to see a huge tax break at the end of the year. Any money that you spend on your house for repairs and upkeep can generally be written off of your taxes. All of your taxes that you spend paying for the house usually get written off at the end as well when you go to do your taxes at the end of the year. So there's usually some great tax benefits to a homeowner that a renter doesn't get.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, usually if you're paying rent to somewhere, the money doesn't go anywhere. There's an old adage about people, when you're paying rent, you're just lighting money on fire. I don't think it's, I don't think that's necessarily the truth, because people need a place to live. But when you're paying your rent, you're literally putting it towards your landlord's mortgage. And so if you're renting a single family home, you're almost always paying more for rent than your landlord is paying for their mortgage. So if you were to buy that same house you're living in, if you're renting out a single family home, your mortgage almost always decreases rather than compared to what you were paying for rent.
Wow.
So yeah, there's some different advantages for it. But most people, if you're living in especially in an apartment complex, I'll be 100% honest with you. I mean, sometimes it's not the best time to buy a house, and I have those conversations with folks all the time. They come in and to sit down and talk with me. We kind of go through what their goals are and what their family looks like and what their everyday life looks like. And we've had conversations that say, why don't you put this on hold for a couple of years? You're paying a decent amount of rent. You don't really have many other bills. Take the time to save your money because it just might not make sense for them. So again, it's kind of a situation by situation thing. But I find for most American families, so the people that I speak with, the people in my community that I talk with on a regular basis, home ownership is almost always a goal for them. And financially, it almost always makes sense for folks.
Wow. There was a recent statistic, some research I look at, Barna Research, and they said that for millennials right now, millennials and Gen Z, 51% of them, the next step over the next 10 years is purchasing a home, right? And even as we've been praying in our church and just getting in our pulpit, we have a prayer wall, and 4 of the requests on there is for God to give open doors even for more purchasing a home and understanding finances and just all of that. And so I guess the last question I have for you, Josh, with that very same thing, are there any first time home buyer programs or simple tips or things that you would suggest to I don't know, let's say we have, so about our church, a 31-year-old with a kid that is out of school for a couple of years and is looking now to go into the step by the end of this year or beginning of 2021 to purchase a home. Some things they can do right now that could help them get prepared for having a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. First, save your money. We talk about how much money it costs to actually purchase a home. And while there are some wonderful programs out there every once in a while, for instance, Rhode Island Housing is a government agency. They're based right out of Providence. They work specifically with families trying to buy homes that may not be able to buy homes other ways. And so what they offer, some programs that are typically really low interest rates. For years, they were doing a down payment assistance program where they were paying your down payment on your house up to a certain amount in certain areas. And you have to qualify for your income. You have to be eligible income wise. But Rhode Island Housing has some great programs. They roll out every once in a while. With this virus thing, we're kind of all up in the air, so we don't really know where that road's going to start to lead. But save your money. Typically, as a first-time home buyer, you're probably going to use an FHA loan, which is a government loan, and they require a 3.5% down payment. So if you take out your calculator and you start seeing a house that you like on Zillow, what's 3.5% of that asking price? And that's what you do have to be responsible for coming to the table with for a down payment. The one surprise that hits a lot of people is the closing costs. We're usually looking at anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 in closing costs. And so that's the money that you're going to pay to your attorney who's going to close your file. It's the money that you're going to pay for your loan officer for all the work that they're doing. It's going to create a little, a nest egg for you to pay your taxes and your insurance over the next year. So it's some of your money that's going back into this account, but we create an escrow account for you that's anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000. Typically, that's a surprise for many first-time home buyers. We've saved up all this money. We got our down payment saved up. We're ready to go. We're fired up. And now it's, oh, we need to come up with another $5,000. Now we have ways to work around that, but I always try to tell folks, try to save a good amount of money because you'll need that not only for the purchase, but it's almost like when you have a baby. You're so excited about having the baby and going through the pregnancy phase and getting into the hospital and taking the pictures that I always remember when my first son was born, that as soon as the nurse closed the door and I was holding him, it was like, oh, now what? It was like this, like we hadn't thought about that far going forward. And
so true.
Same thing for buying a house. We're so excited and jazzed up about going through the process and buying the home, and you get to the closing table and everything's amazing, and you even move into the house and everything's amazing, and then the heating system stops working, or you get some water into the basement, or any kind of unexpected repair. You no longer can call your landlord and ask for things to be taken care of. It's your responsibility. So I always tell people to try to have a nest egg. Try to have maybe three months worth of living expenses in a bank account if that's possible, which isn't an ideal world, but having some little bit of money saved up will make you feel much more comfortable, much more confident going into the whole process, because it is expensive after a while, and there's always going to be unexpected things that pop up along the way. So save your money. Work on your credit. Try to get your credit up as high as possible. The higher your credit is, the better interest rate you're going to have. So that's going to affect you over the life of that loan. So if you have even the difference between 3.5% and 4% is a lot of money every month to have the difference. So that's my biggest things is save your money, get your interest rate up, and there's also things like a mortgage calculator. So if you Zillow, we mentioned Zillow. Zillow actually has a really great mortgage calculator that as you're sitting there looking at different homes and you're in your dreaming phase and trying to figure out where you'd like to move, use this calculator. Even if you punch in averages for the taxes and insurance to show you what it would actually cost to own a $300,000 house every month. It's very difficult for a first-time home buyer to shop by price. $300,000 to someone who's never spent that kind of money is it's just an idea. It doesn't even make sense to them. But when you talk about $1,800 a month, that usually is a little bit more digestible and it makes a little bit more sense. So practice paying yourself. That's what I would also say too. If you find a home and that's going to cost you about $1,600 to $1,800 a month, while you're prepping yourself, pay yourself that amount of money. Even if your rent is $1,200, take the extra and kind of put it into a savings account, but it'll get you comfortable spending $1,800 a month every month over and over, so that it's not a sticker shock for you once you move into your new home. That's probably my tips for you. And then get in contact once you feel a little bit more comfortable, get in contact with people. And you may even want to speak to a couple different loan officers, like one from a private mortgage company, one from a credit union maybe, and then one from a big bank, maybe like Citizens Bank, just to see what different programs are out there at the time.
Awesome. Josh, thank you for this, man. And I know it's been a blessing. And one thing kind of what we're going to do is I was talking to Josh once we get through, I'm calling this Corona time. Somebody else said it's like Corona time or whatever. So once we get through Corona time, I do want to, we have this species called, we're doing this year called Doing Saturdays. We want to come and be concrete about things. And so schedule a time, church, to come together. So any questions you have, you can put them in the comment section and we will make sure to have those tabulated up. So when we get time to schedule with Josh, we want to bring him in and literally sit down and we're like, Josh, what we're doing, we're having these great times. We're going to sit down and actually put podcasts out and build websites out. Okay. And so we talk about this. I want to actually come in and we're not going to theorize it, but these are the next steps. These are the things. So with that being said, Josh, if somebody was watching this, they want to get in contact with you or reach out to you, how can they find you? How can they reach you? Are you like Kim Possible, call me, beat me, all that type of stuff. How do we get in contact with you, Josh?
Yeah, great. So I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Josh West. I might even change now, so maybe I have to revisit that. But the best way to reach me is my cell phone. My cell phone number is 401-447-2862. You can text me, you can call me. You can also email me. I'm really active with email. My email address is joshwesths@gmail.com. And yeah, I look forward to speaking with anybody. As Justin knows, I love to kind of just sit down and talk and see what your dreams are and your goals are and go through everything. So I'd love to speak with any and all of you.
Perfect. Hey, church, I pray you were blessed by Josh on your couches. Give it up for Josh. Thank you so much, man, for your time. I appreciate you, man. And church, keep us in prayer too, because we're hoping by next Sunday when we come together, we'll be walking to our first home. We're praying that this opportunity for us. And Josh has been a godsend for us and all this. So Josh, thank you for your time, man. And I appreciate you. And thank you for coming together with us. So Congregation, let's go back into worship and see what God has to say to us.
All right. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.